Greg, one of the things that you alluded to earlier was the whole issue that I think Silicon Valley is trying to get on the cutting edge of, and that is the innovation in and around energy and being more efficient. And I think one of the questions the viewers are looking in and asking is, as our population continues to grow, and certainly as our economy gets better and better, there's some issue as to whether or not, what is the state of the economy. But as that begins to happen, are we potentially looking at the same kind of issues that we had in the Davis administration, where we catch ourselves short-sighted without getting enough energy power plants in place and becoming more efficient sooner rather than later? I know it's a long question there, but getting to the efficiency with the population growth is kind of what we're...
Well, I think the Commission is addressing that by encouraging the utilities to get back into the energy business to themselves, and they're still encouraging independent power producers. But I think this trade and cap system will be an incentive to get companies to go out and build new power plants and get credits built up in order to make it economically profitable for them to do it. So that's kind of my suggestion to the program.
And I know that you've had the opportunity to deal with others, in Washington, D.C., and you've had the chance to go before and speak. Do you see that there's beginning to be more movement toward looking at these kinds of things that you're proposing?
Well, Europe has adopted this cap and trade system, and it's being considered in the Congress, but it really just hasn't taken the final leap to be embraced by enough people to get it passed. So I would certainly try and educate some of the congressmen that I know personally, and try and do what I can to help others to understand it better and why it's important to do something like that, to let the free market forces develop it rather than to have a regulatory process. I mean, the regulatory can set the cap and decide, but then the market will decide how to do it and who will do it. And it's going to be a challenge, but I think it can be done.
We've been talking a bit about energy, environment, education, all topics that are very often spoken about and of great concern in the Valley. I understand that you actually have made some contributions in another area that is often talked about in the Valley, and that is transportation in terms of Caltrain and in terms of one of the bridges. You might say a little bit about how you've helped there.
Well, I want to back up, though, just one more point on schooling, on this, because lately they've talked about this homeschooling, and I just think that it's very important to address that issue because it's it's got a lot of attention lately, and I have both my grandchildren are being homeschooled, so I'm familiar with the process. And there's no simple answer on how you set the rules to do it, but there's been a lot of success in students that are homeschooled. A lot of kids have gone on to Ivy League schools, so that the academic learning process has been very, very successful in most cases. Now, there's always exceptions, and that's, I think, the lawsuit that it's forced a decision that I don't think is the right one was an extreme case. So I just think that if we have a system, and I would propose a homeschooling system that would have some monitoring by certified teachers, otherwise that the students would be subject to some testing to make sure that they were learning at least to a standard that's comparable to what they're doing in the regular schools. And I think that would be, without imposing the certification on the parents, as long as there's a certified teacher that monitors the program and makes sure that the students are learning, I think that would be enough. And I would propose some kind of legislation, if I could get enough support, that would require that. But the federal government can't require it. It would have to be tied to some funding source that the feds cannot pass laws that tell schools what to do, but they can put some strings on funding that they now receive, that if they didn't do it, it's kind of a chicken and egg incentive program. But I think we could figure out how to do it. And I would be supportive of protecting the homeschooling program nationwide. So I just wanted to get that in before we move on to a different subject.
Actually, before we might come back to transportation, I think it's something we ought to say at this point. I think people have asked you to run for Congress. You're trying to fill the seat of the late Tom Lantos. You might say a little bit about what you're trying to do here, and then we can come back to some of the issues.
Well, it's a unique situation in that Tom Lantos passed on a few months ago, and that seat is open. It's part of San Francisco and most of San Mateo counties, and the party just felt that we needed to get some Republicans running against the Democratic candidates that have some experience and knowledge comparable to what I have, and so I agreed to do it. And it's going to be a big race. It's only 4 weeks away. April 8th, when this show starts, it'll probably only be 2 weeks away or 3 weeks away. But it's April 8th, and it's in the San Mateo County area in San Francisco. But I'm very excited about the opportunity, and I'm running 24/7 to figure out how to do it. I just got some office space in San Carlos, and I've got a staff started, so we're running, and we feel we have a good chance to win. Because remember, I ran for state treasurer 6 years ago, and I got almost 3 million votes statewide. But in this district, I got over 30,000 votes. And I think if a low turnout occurs, that there's a possibility if those same people voted for me that I could win the special election, even though the Democrats outnumber the Republicans 2-1.
And there are lots of independents.
Well, there's a lot of independents, and I personally think they're closet Republicans. That they're really Republicans, but they aren't proud of it as much because they live in such a Democratic district that they're. But I don't know. The reason I say that is because only 15% of them, according to the registrar, voted for either Hillary or Obama. So I mean, if they were really Democrats, you'd think they'd be out there voting for one of those two candidates. So I just have to think they're either a lot of apathy or they're really Republicans. So that's what I'm hoping that they are.